Look, I want to share something with you all today. I know it is Sunday, but you may not watch this video on Sunday. And I want to encourage somebody out there. I want to encourage somebody who's going through something difficult, right? I want to encourage somebody like you're facing something so heavy that you feel like this is the end. Like you feel like you're not going to make it through. You feel like you're not going to recover. But I want you to know that this is not the end, all right? This isn't the end. I know that life can hit you with things that make you feel like it's over. Right? Like I'm talking to the person, maybe you're drowning financially, thinking about going bankrupt, right? Maybe you just went through a divorce and you feel like your family is broken for good. Or maybe you just lost your spouse, you lost your mother, you lost your family, your father or a loved one. And the grief is so heavy on you right now. Or maybe you just got diagnosed with cancer or a condition that you never saw coming. Or maybe you just been trying, you've been pushing, you've been fighting for so long, and it still feels like nothing is working. And all of that can scream at you, this is it. It is over. But I am here to tell you today that this is not the end. See, I'm here to tell you to keep pushing and to keep fighting because I know what it feels like to be in your situation. I know what it feels like to be hopeless. I know what it is to feel like you think your story is over before it's really begun. I know, but you're still trying to breathe and you're still breathing and it's not over. Because if you have breath in your body, it isn't over. And that is one of the things that I had to tell myself, even in my darkest and in my lowest moment, when I was breathing and I had breath in my body. Yes, it felt like life was crashing down. Yes, it felt like I was never going to be able to overcome. Yes, it felt like in that moment that everything was over for me in my life. But I had to remind myself and I had to understand something. And what I understood in my darkest and my lowest moment of life, I understood that as long as I got breath in my body, that means that I can overcome. As long as I got breath in my body, that means that there is a possibility that I will make it out. And I know in that moment when life was crushing me, when things and financial problems, marriage problems, life problems, problems with my children and not understanding things, problem with spiritually. When I was in that place, I had to understand one thing that kept me going. And it was, Josh, you still have breath in your body. So that means that no matter where you are right now, no matter what you are going through, no matter, what the situation may be, no matter what the diagnosis may be, you are still here. You are still here. And so as I went through the darkest and lowest moment of my life, I understood that I still had breath in my body. And I want to talk to you today about, just some of the things, like what to do when it feels like it's the end. Right? Because I've been there, right? I've been in a place to where I felt like it was over for me. I felt like, man, maybe, just maybe everything will be better if I just wasn't here. Where the pressure of the world was on me so heavy. Right? But I want to talk to you today about what to do when it feels like it's the end. Right? I want to talk to you, and one thing that you can do is you have to believe anyway. You have to decide that something is going to come out of this, that something is going to be better. You have to decide that it is still possible, even when you can't see it. You have to have faith. And you see, faith doesn't mean that you have to have all the answers. It don't mean that you have to know everything. What faith means is that it means that you are able to trust that God has all the answers. You are able to trust God and know that you can lean on him, that you can depend on him because he is going to come through for you. Right? You don't have to have everything figured out. And I remember when I was in my low moment, when I was in the darkest place of my life, I didn't have anything figured out. I didn't know how I was going to solve this problem, that problem, that problem, that problem. I didn't know how I was going to recover. But there's one thing that I did know in that moment. I knew that if I could just have faith, if I could just trust in God in that moment, when I was ready to end it all, when I was ready to give up, I remembered in that moment, if the only thing that came to my mind is like, God, you are the only person that I could depend on. Because nobody's helping me in this situation. I'm not even helping myself. And God, I don't know what to do, but I know one thing, God, that I have to trust you. And that's what faith is. It's not knowing, what step to take next. All it is in that moment, wherever you are right now, I want you to think about where you are. And I want you to just take some time out and just surrender and say, God, I don't have the answers. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I'm going to have faith in you and I'm going to trust you. All right. And then as you move forward and trust in God, you have to reframe your mindset. You got to get your mind right. Listen, you have to listen to things that's going to build you up. You have to listen to things that's going to encourage you. You have to listen to things that's going to inspire you, that's going to motivate you. You have to listen to things that's going to build you up and not tear you down. Okay? You have to listen to those things. You have to get the word of God inside of your mind. You have to get the word of God inside of your heart as you're going through difficult things in life and you feel like, man, it is over. You got to reframe your mindset and you got to start listening to something that tells you that this isn't the end. Right? You got to listen. You got to start listening to sermons. You got to start listening to people who are speaking, who sharing their story of life when they was in a place when they were hopeless. And you have to speak life over yourself. You have to speak life over your situation. You have to go ahead each and every day. You have to go ahead and declare over your life, like, yes, it may look like you're in a situation that isn't going to end. You may look like you're in a situation to where, it seems like you will never recover, like you will never make it out. But even in the midst of that moment, you got to speak life over yourself. You got to say, yes, I'm going to make it through. You got to say, yes, I'm going to get out of this situation. I know that it's hard. I know that it looks like, I know what the doctors are saying. I know what's going on. I know the creditors are calling me. I know that the bills are due. I know that this, I know that, I know that, I know that. But one thing that I know is that I'm going to make it out. Because in those difficult moments, it's hard to be able to speak life in those situations because it seems like it's death all around you. It seems like nothing is working. But I want to encourage you today to go ahead and speak life over the situation that you're in. And also, what you have to do, you have to get into the word of God. You have to get into the word of God. See, when my own world was falling apart, I had to get into the word of God. That's where I found hope. That's where I found strength and reminders that he is still writing my story. That's when I knew, that's when I was reminded that God still has a plan and a purpose for me. That's when I was reminded that even in the midst of my darkest situation, even in the midst of everything going on where I felt like a failure, where I felt like a failing father, like a failing husband, like a failing man, when I felt like a failing brother, when I felt like a failing uncle, when I felt like a failing businessman, an entrepreneur, in all of the moments to where I felt like, oh man, I'm just a total failure. I had to go into the word of God because the word of God reminded me of who I belong to. The word of God reminded me, like, yes, I may be in this situation, but I serve a God that is greater than my situation. I serve a God that is greater than my problems. I serve a God that is greater than my circumstances. And in that moment, as I began to get into the word of God, I started to see a change on the inside of me. As I got into the word of God, my mindset started to change. As I got into the word of God, my attitude started to change. And I realized that, man, by me getting in the word of God and believing the word of God, understanding and knowing that the word of God is true and the word of God is going to last until the end of the generation, when I knew that, everything else in this world is going to fall away, but the word of God is going to remain the same. When I start to realize that I can depend on the word of God, that I wasn't just crazy, that I wasn't just believing something. And in the moment, in the very beginning, when I started reading the word, yes, it was negative thoughts that was like, Josh, this word ain't for you. This word isn't going to help you. You're not going to make it out. It was thoughts like that when I was in that dark moment of my life. And I'm like, man, the word of God isn't true. The word of God isn't going to help you in this situation, Josh. The word of God ain't going to bring you out. But as I start to read the word of God continually, even when I didn't feel like it, a change began to happen. And I began to see God move in different ways in my life. I began to see how things started to change. And I began to have hope that I can make it out. I began to have hope in my hopeless situation. When I was in over $250,000 of debt, when I was behind on all of my bills except my life insurance for 90 days plus, when I was getting calls from creditors saying, hey, you owe us this money. We need our money. What are you going to do? Hey, can we set up a payment plan? And I don't have no money to pay them. When my business was crashing and I was thinking like, God, what am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do with this? When I was having problems within my marriage because I wasn't the man that my wife decided that she was going to marry. I wasn't that man. I wasn't the husband that I was supposed to be in that moment. I wasn't the father providing for my kids and being with my kids the way that I was supposed to. I was in deep depression. I was going through so much in that time of life where I didn't know how I was going to make it out. But I stood on the word of God. I stood on the word of God. And one thing that when I stood on the word of God, it allowed me to make declarations over my life. It allowed for me to be able to speak things over my life. You know, they say that life and death is in the power of the tongue. Well, it is, because I started to change my language to I'm never going to get out of this. Oh, this is never going to work out. I don't see how I'm going to get through this. I started to change my language and I started to make a declaration over my life. I said it out loud, and I want you to do the same thing. Say it out loud every day. Say, this isn't the end. Say, I will make it through it. Say, I will recover. I will see better days. You have to remind yourself on a daily basis as you're going through the dark season, as you're going through your low moment in life, as you're going through the diagnosis, and as you're going through chemo, and as you're going through, recovering from whatever situation that you are in. You have to remind yourself, and you have to speak life over yourself. You have to speak it from your mouth. You have to believe it within your heart and know, like, hey, wherever you are in life, that you have to declare, like, I'm going to make it through. God is going to see me through. You got to declare that, yes, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. It doesn't matter what it looked like. It doesn't matter what the situation may be. I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. You got to remind yourself those things, and you got to declare it out of your mouth. You have to open up your mouth, and you have to look yourself in the mirror, no matter where you are, even if you messed up, even if you made mistakes. You have to tell yourself, yes, I know I made a mistake, but my mistake don't define me. You got to tell yourself, yes, life may be in a bad place right now, but I know that better days are going to come. You got to tell yourself, even though it may seem like you are in a situation to where nobody is even helping you, got to say, I know that I'm going to make it through this because God is with me. God is for me. And if God be for me, who can be against me? That's what you got to tell yourself in those dark, in those days to where you don't feel like getting up out the bed, when things in your life is just going, it's all chaos and it's confusion in your life. You got to speak life over yourself. And I'm telling you this from experience, because that's what I did when I was ready to give up, when I was hopeless, when I wanted to check out. I had to remind myself that God still had a plan and a purpose for me in my life, and that I still mattered, and that it was more to my story. So you see, I thought when everything was crashing down, when everything was confusing in my life, I thought that was the end of my story. I thought that I wasn't going to make it out. But even in that moment, I had to declare over myself, and I had to tell myself that I'm going to make it out. I had to declare over my situation that I'm going to see life after this, that there is going to be more to my story. That's what I had to tell myself. I had to remind myself that God has a plan and a purpose for me. And what I also had to do, and what I want you to do, is to surrender what you can't control. You see, some things you can't fix on your own. And you got to be willing to understand that that is okay. You got to be willing to understand that it is okay that you can't fix every problem. It is okay that you can't heal your own self from the diagnosis. And you got to surrender. You see, surrendering is saying that, God, I can't do this by myself. God, I can't do this by myself, but I trust you to do what I can. I trust you, God, to do what I can. And that's what we got to remind ourselves in those moments. Because it's only so, like, let's be honest, right? We can't do everything. We can't make everything happen, right? We got to have faith, and then we got to do what God tells us to do. And you got to surrender that part that you can't control. You got to surrender the control over your life, because a lot of times when we are going through situations, and when we are in a low moment, sometimes it gets so hard because we're trying to control everything. Right? We're trying to save our, like, in the middle of divorce, we're trying to save our marriage. And it's like, no, I don't want this to happen. In the middle of different circumstances and in the middle of different situations, we're trying to control everything. But sometimes when you're in that low moment, when you're in that place to where you can't control it all, you got to say, God, I give it to you. God, I surrender. And that's what I did, because I remember when I was trying to solve all the problems in my life all at the same time, and I couldn't do it on my own. And all that weight that I was carrying, all the pressure that I had on my back when I was trying to do it by myself, when I was trying to make it happen, I had to surrender, and I had to say, God, I'm done. God, I give it to you. God, I'm done. I can't do this all by myself. And I found my need for God. I found out, like, God, I really need you, because at the end of myself, when I came to rock bottom, it was just me there, me and God. And I had to tell myself, Josh, you can't do it all on your own. And in that moment, I remember surrendering to God and just saying, God, I'm done. You take my life, God. You take my life, because I'm at the end. I'm at the end, God. And I surrendered, and I gave my life back to Christ. And I said, God, I want to go, and I'm going to do it the way that you want me to do it. I had to remind myself that in that very moment. So whatever you're facing right now, say this to yourself. Say, this isn't the end. Keep speaking life. Keep believing. Keep showing up. And I want you to know that your best days aren't behind you, but they are still ahead. And no matter where you feel like you are in life, no matter how low you may be, no matter what situation or what problem you are in, no matter what you're facing, I want you to know that this isn't the end. It's not the end until God says it's the end. It's not the end just because everything is falling apart. It's not the end because you can't see your way out of the hole that you're in. It's not the end because of what the doctor said. It's not the end because of what the lawyer says. It's not the end because of what anybody else says. It's not the end if God hasn't said it's the end. So I hope you guys have been encouraged by this video. And I'm all sweating and everything because I'm really passionate about this, because I really understand what it feels like when you think that it's the end of your life, when you think that better is not coming, right? I've been there. And so I hope that you guys have received value. And if you have received value from this video, I want you to go ahead and drop it down in the comments. I want you to just go ahead and say, what touched you, what helped you in this moment when you watched this video, what encouraged you, what inspired you, what motivated you from this video. And also, what I want you to do beyond commenting, what I want you to do is I want you to send this to someone who's going through a difficult time. I want you to send this to someone who feels like this is the end for them. I want you to send this to someone to encourage them, to let them know that this isn't the end, whether that's a family member, whether that's a friend. I want you to send this video to inspire them and help them, to give them some energy, to give them some inspiration on this day. So I hope you guys are encouraged, man. Stay tuned to the channel, and I will be back again on tomorrow. And I hope that you guys just know that whatever you're going through in life, this